Welcome, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Nicholas. I'm the Professor of Military Science. All right, for the Army program, I think most of you, obviously my Army cadets know who I am. A lot of the Air Force cadets have probably seen me before. Myself and Lieutenant Colonel Charrington put this event together and invited two of our distinguished alumni here, retired Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sloniker and retired Lieutenant Colonel William Schwartzfigger, and they're both 1967 alumni of both the Army and the Air Force program. All right, and then shortly after they got out here, both of them made their way on different tracks to Vietnam when that conflict was going on. So they've got a lot of experience, a lot of stories, and they're going to share, all right, information on core values, and then also code of conduct, which applies to all of our services, all right? And they're going to do that for about the next hour. They've got a couple of videos in here, all right, to keep it lively. And then at the end, we will take 20 to 30 minutes to do question and answer period. All right?
Thanks.
Well, I want to thank you, Bill and I want to thank you for putting the cloth of the United States of America on. It means a lot to us. It's not just uniform to us. It's the cloth of our country, and it means a lot. And it's not significant to a lot of your classmates. It's not significant to a lot of people, but very significant to us. So I want to thank you first off just for just showing up, because it's a big deal. We both launched out of here, and we were in different buildings, completely different buildings that you're in now. We were in Quonset huts. I think you were in Quonset huts too. And it was where the parking spot is now. So everything changes except for the stuff that we got here. And we got the spirit here. Bill and I have been very engaged in a lot of different activities. And come on in, you're cool. With these activities, I mean, we're everywhere. I think some of you enjoyed the hamburgers. But this here, we're going to do this again in January. So when we do it again in January, you got a friend that might be interested? You got some other significant person that's important to you that you'd like to bring? Bring them. It's just hamburgers and bratwurst. But it's an opportunity to talk to each other and just have that opportunity. We enjoy doing it. I always bring the great American taxpayer right there, Mark Beasy. He never got to serve. He didn't get drafted. He was in a time when he get drafted. It sometimes bothers him. And I don't understand why, but it does. And he's always wanted to do something, so he's always with us. And that's him. This gentleman right here is very important to Bill and I. Because every night when you take our flag down, that man's out there in his pickup truck in any weather situation. I saw you do it on the 21st of August. It was the Air Force that did it. And the way you honored our flag is really important. Master Sergeant Fleck just came from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. 1700, that cannon goes off at Fort Campbell. All the speakers around the base played the music for the flag coming down. And every one of us get out of the car and salute the music because we can't see the flag. It's important. It's really important. Patriotism is everything. This young fellow right here is a 2012 K-State grad, as is this young man. We went up to K-State and did the same class we're doing now. This young fellow on the right is in pilot training at Enid. Young man, I mean the one on the left, the one on your left, the one on the right is going to be in the back end of an AWACS. I can't think of that skill level of battle command, air battle manager. So everybody's got an important job. Up there is Bill, Chuck de Bellevue, short fat guy, and Colonel Bill Mayer. Colonel Mayer is the squadron commander of the 71st Student Squadron at Vance. And he has asked us to come up and do heritage classes. We talk about the Air Force heritage. So when you bring, they let me go first because they want to set the bar low, okay? Because I told them about close air support, loading the C-5, the C-17, how important it was to be a tanker pilot, because it doesn't get there unless you have gas. I just tried to make them aware of the person in the back of the airplane, the Army guy, the Marine guy, the people that are gonna jump out of their airplanes. So I did it, then the Bellevue lives a half a mile from me, and the Bellevue is a very significant individual. He's the only person in the United States Air Force that shot down 6 enemy fighters in '72. 5 of them are an ace, he's got 6. So it really gets inspirational to see the young fighter pilots and the young lieutenant colonels and the young captains and the majors when he shows his video of them shooting that thing out of the sky. Jaws are down, you know, hey, this is what I want to do. So it's a pretty good group of people. And that right there is a good group of people. It's just inspirational to us to see you here. Back in 2011, Lieutenant Colonel Will Beck said, I'd like you to talk to Lieutenant or Cadet Steve Womachow. I'd never done that before. I lived in Virginia at the time. And I knew I was going to retire from Lockheed Martin, my second career. First of all, I had 23 years in the Army, and then I went to Lockheed Martin for 21 years in Northern Virginia. So I had 44 years of work. Well, Womachow is the young man they tell me to go see. I don't know if any of you know Womachow. He's 6'3". He's from Midland, Texas. And when you talk to him and he agrees with you, he says, right. Isn't that right? Right. And after a while, I had to adapt to this because I'm used to Virginia communications and not Oklahoma, Texas communication. Right is everything you need to know. So he was one of your top students up here, and he got to go to a meeting in Washington, D.C., and I picked him up in Baltimore, and I took him to the hotel, took him around D.C. Then afterwards, and when it was over, I took him to some other stuff I'll show you. Well, in 1967, when I left here, I went to the Field Artillery Basic School at Fort Sill, and when I finished the basic school, basic course, I went to 101st Airborne, this one right here, for you Air Force guys. And walked into it, and they said, you're not an airborne guy, so you gotta go to Fort Benning Jump School. Okay, fine. And when I came back November the 10th, and they said, we're going to Vietnam December 1st. Okay? So 4 months after I stepped on active duty, I was in country breathing Vietnam air, which is polluted. And the significance is every place I went in '67, Womachow went in 2011, because he was in the 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry as an artillery officer, and that's the same unit I was in. So we kind of kept close. He's already had a tour in Afghanistan. He always likes to pose with all his gear. Kind of looks like Fort Sill. It looks, where he was, kind of looks like Fort Sill, except the elevation's different. And I'm not real sure what was the purpose of having me, I don't like to call it mentor, because it's a two-way street. He's mentoring me. I'm learning about what he's doing. But at the same time, they gave me another one to talk to, Will Kleintold. Now, Kleintold just finished flight school, and Kleintold's going to the 5th Battalion, 101 Aviation Battalion at Fort Campbell. I flew helicopters at Fort Campbell. So one of them was an artilleryman, was an aviator. They're both at Fort Campbell, and there's a probably strong probability when they have all the veterans come back, they call it Week of the Eagles. I'll go back to that. And the irony of that, for you young guys to understand, is when I had to be there at Fort Campbell and saw all these old bow-legged fat guys come up, I thought, man, look at that. Now I are one. But it's important for the bond that we earned. This is a bond we earned. I see it in the Air Force. And I see it in the Marine Corps. And I see it in the shipmates with the Navy. You put that cloth on, it's different. One thing that Steve did, Womachow did, is he wanted to go to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I used to be a guide down there when I lived in Northern Virginia, so I know where all the names are on all 70 panels. I know where everything is. And When you go into the joint lounge, right in the front is that Remington statue with the horse, that's David Peters. But right there's David Peters' name on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And that's his younger brother, who's a year older than me. I came up here spring of 12, and in this Starlight Room, and saw your award ceremony, and I saw Peters again. I hadn't seen him. Peters was an artilleryman that really got hosed up, bad wound. And when he healed, he went to the Medical Service Corps. When he went to the Medical Service Corps, because he couldn't maintain a combat arms specialty, he retired as a full colonel, and he's just finishing being a hospital administrator. So there's a lot of things you can get out of your service. If I hadn't gone to what I'd done and then changed at the 18th year into the thing called acquisition, which Lieutenant Colonel Charrington and I both know exactly what that is. It's a specialty. That's what my second career was. So you can make, you can do everything and just always keep focused on the future, because there's all kinds of things you're going to learn here while you're in the service. I was kind of surprised when he took a picture of the name of Tommy Campbell. Tommy Campbell's on the side of that wall, and he's got a helmet on. Tommy Campbell and I graduated from Lawton High in '63. He was the son of a lieutenant colonel, and we both left here in '67. And he went to flight school, and he was lost covering some Rangers at night. And, you just kind of forget. And if it hadn't been for Womachow in February of '11, going down there, I'd have never known where the name was. So I really appreciate that, because you have one Neil Bynum. And Neil Bynum is, the Air Force. He was lost in '69. He was a December '66 grad. He's a fighter pilot. So there's always something that we remember somebody's name, because when we look at that, we see the young face. We don't see these old faces. This is what Bill and I took off and launched and tried to do. Way back in September of '11, I came up here and met to Bellevue. There's Colonel Winslow, and this is Bill. And we just started talking about, what is it you're doing? We were totally unaware of scholarships, non-scholarships. We were unaware. We just didn't know. And the more we talked, the more we realized there might be things we can do to help. It may not be much, but there might be ways we can help. So what really tipped it off is this Navy family right here. This is the Kelsey family from Lawton, Oklahoma. This is Dr. Charles Kelsey and his wife, Sidonia. And the person that this is the name of is Bob Kelsey. Bob Kelsey, 63 Lawton High. Bob Kelsey was a super achiever. One of the smartest guys in the class. And he wanted to fly Navy jets, so he went to ROTC at OU. He had 2 tours in Vietnam, one in the A4 off a carrier and one in the A7. There was a period on April 11th, '72, when he was high dropping bombs and I was low flying a Huey hit. We got to talk about it in '89. He died of a brain tumor in '92. But his family, his father and mother, set aside $25,000 to educate his children. Didn't need it. They all got scholarships and didn't need the money. So the money just laid around and grew up to be $58,000. So what they did is they put it into a fund, and now there's a scholarship every year in the name of Bob Kelsey down here. This young man that got it, his name's Tompkins. At the time he got it, he wanted to go to Navy nuclear propulsion. But the more he talked to that big guy on the left, in white, that's Bob's second son, who is an F-18 pilot, who is going to Cornell for medical school to be a Navy flight surgeon. He decided to go to flight school. So, what spurs you on, what makes the difference for you? It doesn't, because you got wings on the flight, it make you anything special. It's just you broke the tyranny of the ground, but it's a whole team effort. And this young fella inspired me, and I talked to Bill about it. So Bill's always out doing me. He's always out there. And that's okay, because he flies faster than I do, and that's okay. But Bill established this setup here. This is a Neil Bynum picture. And this is the Neil Bynum family from Arkansas. And this was the award ceremony for scholarships that he'd set up. This is the one he has at OU in the name of his son. And we just keep looking at ways of what can we do to help? And at the same time, how do you do that? Now, in my case, I got to die because I fixed mine up so that when I die, money set aside, it goes into the OSU Foundation, it turns into an ROTC scholarship for the Army. I don't intend to die yet. We are inspiring our other alumni to do what they can to help you. Now, I was told by a cadet at K-State, when we went up to K-State, that if we can manage a $1,000 scholarship, because your bills are $18,000 according to the school, that keeps somebody from working 20 hours a week as a waiter. I can do that. So we don't really know, but we're doing what we can, and we're trying to get other people to understand this and how it works. We were up in Kansas State about 3 weeks ago. This is Chuck de Bellevue again. It was May Ace. This is retired 4-star General Dick Meyer, and he's a 65 grad. He went from Air Force ROTC to 4 stars to the highest level that you can achieve as a military man, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Next to him was Bill, and then next to him was Roger Locker. Roger Locker is an incredible story because we were with him at Vance on Monday where he talked to the brand new lieutenants. And he spent he got shot out of his MiG next to the North Vietnamese capital of Hanoi, and he was on the ground 24 days, and he got rescued. And he was in the traffic pattern where you could hear the jets land, the North Vietnamese jets land. And so this book, I want to let Sergeant Fleck read, is that story of survival. Somewhere along the line, you're going to go to survival, escape, resistance, and evasion, SEER, S-E-R-E. All the lieutenants at Vance go to SEER and Fairchild in Washington pilots. This is how you survive. And the reason he survived is he knew the land. He was a farm boy from Sabetha, Kansas. He's a 69 K-State grad. And when you listen to him talk, you hear somebody who knows the land. He knew that he was too close, and he had to walk 60 miles before they'd even come to rescue him. So he gave it a shot. It's a tremendous story, a tremendous story. And the book's called One Day in the War, and we got to hear it again. He retired as a full colonel in the Air Force. He was a F-16 Viper pilot. Today he's a farmer on the border, more concerned with his cows and his farm. And when you shake the hand, you're shaking the hand of a real American because it's hard hand, been out there working. And that's one thing that is just so important to me because I've been gone. And I came back here in July of 11. And I always knew that I got my work ethic from Oklahomans in Lawton, the Coke plant, the Meats Bakery, roofing company, you know, really worked me hard. But they taught me you had to work to get your money. And that came from Oklahomans. And you just go back to your roots. This is part of your core values. Your word is what you are. We got the honor of going to the Air Force birthday party at Fort Riley, Kansas, with the 10th Operational Support Squadron. Master Sergeant Flex got a lot of badges, okay? So did these Air Force guys. They've got air assault badges, they've got Pathfinder badges. There's 2 Rangers in the unit. One of them's a high altitude, low opening, and they're Air Force. There's the guys that go right with the Army. There's something called a JTAC and a ROMAD. These are the guys that talk to the fighters and the bombers. These are the guys with the laser designators. The laser designate the spot. These guys' jobs are so important. They've got to have that GPS right. It's got to be correct when the bomb comes on them. So it's really something to see them. They're all incredibly physically fit. They got better gym equipment in their building than the Army does. Next to that, at Fort Riley, it was amazing to see what they had. So these are really, this is part of this team thing. Bill and I are joint. We're not just Army, just Air Force, we're joint. In fact, we've even talked to the Navy at K-State, Kansas University, and all I wanted to talk about was their basketball team. This young man is Airman San Juan. Airman San Juan was our guide, the guy that took us. He's from Los Angeles. He was really proud to be in the Air Force. He's standing in the memorial for Airman Brad Smith, who was killed in 2010 from that unit in Afghanistan. It's a great tribute to this young man, Smith. So they didn't forget the fallen. They didn't forget who they were from. I was just like gnawing on wood being around that unit because everybody's walking around with shirts off and Under Armour. I kept harassing them like, you need to work on your pecs. I mean, they are something to see. So don't put somebody in a box because he's got blue on or green on or whatever the Marines wear. It's all the same. It's all the same. No offense. Sorry, no offense. This is what sets us on fire, okay? In 2011, when I came back, I bought season tickets. And I hadn't been to a game since 72. Well, yeah, 72. So I was in Lewis Field, the old thing that was bouncing all the time, rotten and rusty. And here comes a bullet. That'll make you stand up. I mean, you know, I'm watching stuff on TV. I had to spend special money on ESPN to watch the Big 12 in Virginia. Not good. But here comes this, and this really cranked me up. Then what cranks me up every time is we start, I'm in section 303 by the flag, okay? And you guys come out with our colors. And that's really special. And I appreciate the way you do it, because I know you're trained to do it. We're all watching it. This is the only thing those people see for the military. A lot of them. So they see you come out and do the honors to the flag, and then you're down in the front, and then we do the song to Oklahoma, and where I'm standing, there's nobody not paying attention. Their hats are off and they're singing loud. And that's the difference of what this state is. Well, Oklahoma State is. It's extremely patriotic to me to hear that. Now, Bill went last week to his first game since '67. So what did he put on his phone? National anthem. He's got it on that phone. It's powerful. It's extremely powerful. So I want to thank you for just doing that. Because this is always flapping to the right of me. This is amazing. This is amazing. The sequence. You gotta say, you know, we gotta watch the windows. We all have to watch the windows. And that's what K-State says, we're watching the windows. Finish watching the windows, boom, do this, then the horse runs, boom, out you come, push-ups. Safety person is watching what's going on. We're taking pictures. And it's just really something to see. And the E7, Grunwald. Grunwald did 88 push-ups when they played Savannah State. 88 push-ups. Because you guys were kind of gassed. Now I want to tell you something about your NCOs. This, you got to be deaf when you come home. You got to be deaf because it's noisy where I am. And there's, notice that the leadership is standing out there getting ears blown out too, because this is really loud where I am, way on the other side on the 15-yard line in the shade. But this is what they see. This is not that stupid tiger from whatever he is, from K-State doing push-ups. It's not that jerk from the Mountaineers doing his push-ups. And it's not that stupid duck from Oregon. It's now 2 years ago or a year ago, I heard a little guy that had birth control glasses on. He's the Air Force, and he was in the room where you guys have that joint room, and he said, I just did my 70 push-ups and I could be in the push-up board. He had the blue boots on for the Air Force. And I turned around and looked at that kid and I thought, wow. Because we take it, you know, green guys just take it for granted. He had to work his way up to that. I was inspired by that. I was very inspired by that. So just understand, you're under the microscope when you're down there. This is the bond that I talk about. This is Clovis Jones. Clovis Jones flew Cobras with me Well, he flew Cobras when I flew Hueys. And I had not seen Clovis for a long time. And in 2009, the 101st Airborne, who always has a welcome home ceremony for the guys coming home from Iraq or Afghanistan, said, let's have one for the Vietnam vets. And I thought, I don't need to do that. My wife said, I'd go. So in 2009, I went from Virginia to this. And the front rank, they didn't know how many they'd have. But there were 1,700 of us. They had to do 500 at a time, so they did 3 iterations. The front row was 3 Medal of Honor awardees. And a whole bunch of guys with oxygen because they smoked too much and their lungs are gone. They're in a wheelchair, so there's this parade coming out. And it was absolutely beyond belief. Beyond belief. Because the children and the grandchildren got to honor the Vietnam vets. We didn't really get honored when we came home. And it was really powerful, extremely powerful. Really meant a lot to us. This is what it looked like from where I was. And it was getting a little emotional down at the 101st Screaming Eagles. They had a real eagle down there, big sucker. And it's not an Auburn War Eagle that they let loose, they held him. And what got me about it, I'm standing next to Marines. And this Marine says, my wife said we need these tissues in case we sweat too much. And I thought, sweat? We're tearing up. And the Marines were crying. And I thought, this is so special to so many people. We had Navy bias, Air Force bias, Army bias. And it's not important that we be honored. What you need to understand is the bond is so strong when you join these units and you get into them that it stays with you for a long time. You also need to know, this test question. Bob Kelso, 68 OU, football player. He went to play for the Buffalo Bills. Bob Kelso is the only NFL player on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And he's from OU. He's from Del City. And he was in 101st. He was in a 155 artillery battery up on a place called Ripcord. He died in July 70. And I just think it's significant to know that a fellow Oklahoman is the only one from the NFL. Because people from Buffalo make these wooden plaques of the helmet. And they leave it by his name at the bottom where his name is. He's over on the left side of the panel. What makes you different? What makes you different? Now, Echo Hawk was a different breed of cat, okay? But what makes you different from your classmates is that you're going to take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Your classmate's going to graduate, and if he goes to something like I did, which is Lockheed Martin Corporation, which makes missiles and airplanes, you take stuff off the laptop. You're required to do training on the laptop. And they call it ethics. They call it all kinds of stuff. But you raise your right hand. I don't remember. I think it was Lamar. At Lamar, based football game, they brought out a bunch of Army National Guard guys, and they took an oath of re-enlistment. And there was a bunch of them, and the general did it. At the next game, there was 50 of them out there signing up to join the Army National Guard during one of those times, the timeout things. And around me, people quit talking and heard him say, support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's what makes you different. And whether you stay in or stay out, you're different. You come with a different code. Industry recognizes that. Because when I went to Lockheed Martin, they wanted to know if I was a veteran. They wanted to know. So it's great purpose. I'm going to show you these core values, which are common sense. These are common sense. Okay? Service before self is common sense. 24/7 is common sense. It's just common sense. But it's not common sense to a lot of other people. Okay? And this one, I just went to a website and copied it down. Excellence in all things we do. One thing that Chuck de Bellevue talks about is that when you get a sorry job to do it the best you can. Because it ain't gonna last forever. And somebody's gonna rely on you on how well you've done that job. Nothing bothered me more than being a voting officer in 1968 on the top of a mountain in Vietnam for an artillery battery of 62 guys. I didn't understand any of that stuff. This was the first time I was allowed to vote. You had to be 21 then. And so all this stuff comes to me. And I found out from the sergeants how important it was, because we were doing absentee voting. And I didn't want to be the voting officer. It's just something, you know, I didn't understand it, but I understood then what it meant. I did the best I could. And it was Humphreys and Nixon were the president, the absentee ballots we had. So you can get some jobs that are, you think, oh man, this sucks. Supply jobs. Somebody loses something. You've got to do something to trace where it went. You think, oh, yeah. Sooner or later, you're going to be in charge of something, and somebody's going to lose something, and you better figure it out. So this lower level jobs all pay off. And forever and a day, listen to the NCOs. You do not know more than an NCO, I swear to you. I grew up in a family where my dad was an NCO. And I already told the sergeant about this, but it's stunning. On the 28th of May of '67, standing down there where the old gym used to be, and your grandmother puts a gold bar on, and your mother puts a gold bar on, and my dad looks at me now and says, "Don't embarrass the name." I didn't know he didn't like officers. You know? I didn't know. So it became abundantly clear to me of the position you were in as an officer. And he says, don't be friends with the enlisted, because you might ask them to do something you don't. It's going to be this, it's hard for them to do. And do not let NCO, he said, let NCOs do NCO's jobs. I commanded an 8-inch battery, which is a howitzer battery, an airborne artillery battery, and a helicopter company. And that paid off. I let NCOs do NCO's jobs. It paid off, because then we worked as a team. It wasn't me down there micromanaging, are you checking this, are you checking that? But I managed by foot. I was visible. And then I would listen. And there's nothing more challenging to any of you that go to aviation in the Army and fly school, it's the warrant officers. Because that's your expertise base. Whereas in the Air Force, there aren't any. But in the Army, your instructor pilot, your flight examiner, your safety guys are warrant officers. And they're specialists. And you gotta learn to respect them. When you step in the cockpit, you may outrank him, but he may be the aircraft commander. So don't walk in like you're some blessed God, because this is a joint effort, it's a team effort, and they want to teach you. They want to teach you. The NCO wants to teach you. The young man that is a supply clerk that does all this stuff you don't understand, he wants to teach you. If you act like you want to learn. I'm going to show these to you. Then we're going to roll, but place the mission first. That's kind of hard. That's kind of hard. You're going to get married. There's going to be children. She's going to be not in Oklahoma, she's going to be some other base. There's things that are going to happen. She has to understand that the mission comes first, you're going to deploy. So that's part of the deal. I'll never accept defeat. Well, sometimes you get defeated, but just keep working at it. Just keep working at it. And I'll never leave a fallen comrade. We're going to go through that. This Soldier's Creed I found one place, and I really like it, because in the 60s and 70s, the way of training in the Army was tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Okay? I'm American soldier, and I'm American soldier at the bottom. It's for every service. You got to understand what you're signifying by wearing the uniform. I will always maintain my arms, my equipment, myself. Some of the filthiest weapons I ever saw were the lieutenants in Vietnam, because we're doing something else. And my infantry company commander was trying to, he just knew there was going to be some gold rust, he called it gold, in my weapon. And there wasn't any, because I didn't think the M16 would work. So I kept it clean, and I put this stuff called LSA on it, so I always had oil all over me. But I never had to shoot it, because my job was not to shoot. My job was to get on the radio to adjust artillery. But I saw some pitiful weapons. And when you need that weapon to work, it's got to be clean. Everybody's weapon's got to be clean. And when I first got to Vietnam second tour, they gave me this 38. And my attitude was, I'd be better off just throwing it at him than shooting him. So this warrant officer suckered me into buying a .357. I did not know that the only way you should shoot that is this way. Okay? And did not know that it's worthless in a Huey. Because if you shoot with one arm, out the window, it goes into the arm socket and it hurts. But it was clean. Now, Bill Squirtfinger will tell you a story about how he ejected and what he carried with him when he ejected. An important lesson. Okay, we're getting close to this video that would be the end of my time. And I had the high honor of, and it happened by accident, of flying out to places where special forces teams were doing human intelligence. Human. These are 2 Americans and 4 indigenous. The indigenous could be any nationality. And we just go get them. And this is a really neat picture because the aircraft is over the country of Laos, and the clouds in the back is North Vietnam, and on the edge of the picture is South Vietnam. These are 2 special forces E-7s that are having the time of their life. We carried stuff called load-bearing equipment. I don't know what you call it now, but we call it LBE. And they would sew in a D-ring, and then they would just hook it to this. And if they faced backwards, I could fly 90 knots. If they faced forward, I had to fly 40 knots. I don't like to fly 40 knots. So they would face backwards and just hang underneath there. And it was, if they were on it, it was a place we couldn't stop and land. We had to get them in and get them out quick. And to be associated with those guys was very special for me. I belong right now to the Special Forces Association in Oklahoma. And I'm an associate member because I didn't ever go to Special Forces training, but they kind of like the taxi cab driver to be with them. And these are super guys. How super are they? They're going to buy, in November when you get your branch qualifications in the Army, these old fellows are going to buy your 2nd lieutenant infantry shoulder boards. It's significant to them. And so it is, you know, they want to give back and they don't know how, and we're going to do it that way. These are the real guys. This is not game station. This is the real stuff. Now what we're going to see next, well, one thing I want you to see, you may hear next in Sergeant Benavides talk about a belly man. The belly man is another Special Forces guy, and he's right there on the side. You can't see him, but he's there looking down at him. The belly man is part of their unit, and he's making sure they're safe. Because we're just trying to get out. The belly man's right there. So if you hear Benavides say the belly man is safe, then that's what that is. And the next picture is the closest I can come to what Benavides is going to talk about. Roy Benavides is, if you ever get a non-commissioned officer unit like that, just special guy, special guy. And this is a shot down, burned up Huey right here. That's the main rotor. This is the medevac coming in. This is the guys they're coming to get. This is the closest picture I could find of what he's going to talk about when he went in and to bring guys back, and then they had to come get him. So I just want to try to give you a perspective. It's like the that Rabbit Hill area of Fort Sill that's over on the north side near that turnoff to Apache, or turnoff to Madison Park. It's kind of a flat area that he was in, except it has some jungle in it, and it's flat. And every time I see this thing at Benavides, I'm so glad I got to know guys like that. This is 9 minutes long, and it's kind of special. Can you see it in the back?
Yes, sir.
I started out my career as a National Guardsman in El Campo, Texas. I lived there. I retired. I was born in Cuero, the turkey capital of the world. like a fool that dropped out of school, and I'm not proud of it. I wanted to learn a skill. I wanted money in my pocket. I wanted good clothes. I wanted to have a car. And I learned early in life that why dig a ditch when you can supervise the digging. So I joined the Texas National Guard.
Raul Roy Benavidez began a long and illustrious military career in the Texas Army National Guard during the Korean War. By 1965, Benavidez had joined the Army's 82nd Airborne Division and was on his way to South Vietnam to act as an advisor to an ARVN infantry regiment.
I stepped on a landmine my first trip to Vietnam. I woke up at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. I was declared never to walk again. I was paralyzed from the waist down. So I used to slip out of bed at night, and I'd crawl to a wall, and I'd sit against a wall, and I'd back myself up against the wall and stand there, trying to move my toes right and left, right and left. And I begged God to please help me. 7 months later, I walked out of that hospital. I walked out with a limp, but I walked out. I went back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I made 3 parachute jumps in one day, and I was ready, physically and mentally fit, to go back to Vietnam. In April of '68, I was inserted deep behind lines with another friend of mine to gather intelligence information of the enemy. My buddy in the second day got shot through the eye, the face, and the back, and I didn't want to leave him behind. So I called in for an extraction helicopter to come in and get us out. They come in with what we call a McGuire rig. It's nothing but a piece of rope that picks you up from danger to safety. In this case, it was 2 pieces of rope. And we have what we call a bellyman. In this case, it was Leroy Wright. Sergeant Wright and I had been together for years. He couldn't look out that helicopter as we were coming out the canopy of the jungle. Our ropes had twisted. And you know what nylon rope does when it rubs? It burns. And Sergeant Wright, a black non-commissioned officer, he looked out and he saw that 2 ropes were twisted and they were burning. He tied himself with what we call a belly band, and he pulled himself out of the helicopter. He worked himself down those 2 ropes, and he untangled those 2 ropes. That's love, a fellow man, dedication. And when I found out that Leroy Wright's team was trapped, I volunteered to go in and to get him out.
On May 2nd, 1968, Benavidez was at a forward operating base in Lac Ninh when word arrived of a 12-man intelligence gathering team that had been pinned down by superior NVA forces. 3 helicopters had already attempted to extract them, but were unable to land due to intense enemy fire. Racing to board a 4th rescue helicopter and realizing that all of the team's members were either wounded or dead, Benavidez directed the aircraft to a nearby clearing and leapt from the hovering vehicle to assist. Armed only with a knife and his medical bag, Benavidez ran approximately 75 meters under withering enemy fire and was hit several times in the attempt. Despite his own injuries, Benavidez administered aid to wounded team members and carried or dragged the others to the safety of the extraction helicopter. He also made certain to recover the fallen sergeant's body and secure the classified documents he was carrying. But while making his way back, the helicopter pilot was hit and the aircraft crashed. Now critically injured, Benavidez fought his way back to the wreckage, where he struggled desperately to free the wounded, form a defensive perimeter, and direct airstrikes to allow another rescue landing to be attempted. But it would be hours from the start of the action before that help would arrive.
I spent 6 hours, pardon the expression, God, in hell. I got shot 5 times. I was hitting them out with the butt of the weapon. My jaws were locked. I was bayoneted on both arms. Helicopters after helicopters came in to get us out. The last helicopter that came to get us out, these officers, dedicated men like you, men and women. These officers, 4 of them volunteered to come and get us out. Our life was in their hands. This is dedication that we have with one another. When they pulled me out, they said that I was holding my intestines in my hand. I don't remember. I was so scared, so tired, that they let me lay on the floor of that chopper. And blood was flowing all around us. When we pulled up, blood was flowing out like an open socket. When we landed, and they started identifying the bodies, they found out that I loaded 3 dead enemy soldiers by mistake. I didn't want to leave anybody behind. And so they let me lay next to the enemy soldier, NVA, and they were putting them in body bags. And I couldn't talk. They were already put me in a body bag, and the zipper was coming up, and I couldn't tell this guy, hey, I'm still alive, man. I'm still alive. And my buddy, Jerry Cottonham, he went and got a doctor, grabbed him, and he made that doctor feel my heartbeat. When I felt that doctor's hand on my chest, I spit in his face. That's the only sign that I had, the only strength that I had to let him know that I was still alive.
Where did we find such men? We find them where we've always found them. In our villages and towns, on our city streets, in our shops and on our farms. I have one more Vietnam story, and the individual in this story was brought up on a farm outside of Cureo in DeWitt County, Texas, and he is here today. I learned of his story, which had been overlooked or buried for several years. It has to do with the highest award our nation can give, the Congressional Medal of Honor, given only for service above and beyond the call of duty.
It took 13 years for me to be recognized. But during those 13 years, I worked hand in hand with the Air Force, the Marines, the SEALs. I was an advisor to the reserve units, the National Guard. And my greatest accomplishment was to see that the officers and the non-commissioned officers work together. Wherever you're at, in civilian clothes or in uniform, we work together. We never let each other down. There was one question that I know you wanted to ask, but you didn't ask, and I'm going to answer it for you. Would you do it over again? I see some heads nodding over there. I'll answer you in this manner. There'll never be enough paper to print the money, nor enough gold in Fort Knox for me to have to keep me from doing what I did. We should never look at color of skin. The only color we should look at, right there, red, white, and blue. We're all Americans. I'm proud to be an American, and even prouder that I earned the privilege to wear the green beret. I live by the mantra.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And before Bill starts, I wanted to thank everybody for your attention. Now you're going to get the good stuff. In this picture, it's 55 in the class of 67. You guys are doing 13. Doesn't matter what the quantity is, it's quality. It's equality. And if it's down to 5, it's equality. It's equality because of the standards. Bill and I are very proud to have a military service, but we're also proud of the orange. Very proud of the orange. So here's Bill.
You guys will notice there were 55 guys that didn't want to get drafted, so they went to the Army ROTC. There were 48 Air Force guys that saw the light also and didn't want to be drafted. And for those that know what that band is, I appreciate you wearing your braids of the Honor Bear Society. It is a organization that you should be proud of and carry on that tradition. Out of this class, most of us were pilots or had pilot slots. Again, most of us would prefer to be in the air rather than on the ground. Here's my hero shot. I'm just an old country boy. Grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. Went to pilot training in advance after I graduated here from Oklahoma State. And my goal was to fly that F-4 into combat. And I had wanted to fly since I was 6 years old. I had some obstacles in there. I had a brain concussion from an accident, and I flunked the physical because they says, if you got a brain concussion, you cannot be a pilot. I grabbed this old sergeant that was doing my physical. I says, listen, I'm going to be a pilot. Now, either you can pass me. He says, okay, what we'll do is we'll let you lay it down here a little bit because the heart rate was kind of going squirrely and things like that. And they finally checked me off and says, okay, you're qualified to go through flight training. Then I was spending a lot of time in our Air Society in 66 and 67. We won the Thunderbirds, that's us, won the Armed Air Society's major award. We went down to Waco to pick that thing up in the junior year. Second party. Unfortunately, all that partying during that junior year made my grades go down. And when the grades went down, the draft board goes, uh-oh, you're no longer in the ROTC program because you went below the 2.0 average. And I said, so I went and talked to the PAS, just like some of you may have to talk with Lieutenant Colonel Church or Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas and say, I'm going to go to summer school and I'm going to get a 3.0 during summer school. And if I do